is the Resolute Podcast, where we are discipling and developing men to live with conviction. I am Vince Miller, your host, and today we are discussing finances again and how to build wealth. Men, welcome back to the program. If this is your first time tuning in, then thanks for joining us. The Resolute Podcast is produced multiple times every week. We have Resolute study guides that go along with this podcast for your men's group found on the website for members at beresolute.org. Come back often. Feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or in iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. All the links are on the website. So let's dive in. I'm here one more time with my good friend Nick Barum, and we're just hanging out here talking about finances. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Great. We're going to be diving into how to build wealth today. And I think part of what we're going to learn today is that there's something more behind wealth than we realize. So I know, Nick, that you're not a guy who's in love with money, but I know that your guys tried to understand it over the years, and you have built up a wealth of wisdom. So why don't you share with us a little bit around the principle of how we can build wealth? And then I'm just going to want to ask a little later, is that bad? So how do we build wealth in our life?
Well, building wealth is different than being a consumer and making money.
Okay.
Being a consumer is you spend everything that you make.
Okay.
And maybe that is the end goal. Andrew Carnegie said, the goal is to make as much as I can and spend it all before I die, so I leave this world with zero.
Okay. That's one philosophy.
That's one philosophy.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. But building wealth, and I don't consider wealth to be necessarily tied with money, though most of us think that it is. That's the only way you have wealth. But you have a huge wealth of knowledge about the Bible.
Okay.
You've got it more than I do.
Okay.
Right? So you've built that wealth. I have not. And I'm learning through you in order to do that. But building wealth is really the simple form of it is taking more in than what you're letting go out.
Okay.
And whatever you've got left over, investing that to make more for you.
Okay, got it. So it's actually pretty simple. I don't think that it's moving from a mindset that we're just a consumer, even though there are some philosophies that say make as much as you can and spend it all before you die, right? Which there's probably some truth to that. On the other hand, you're saying that the simple principle around building wealth or building up more than you currently have today is to make more, spend less, and then with what you make to reinvest that so that can generate more for you in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So it sounds like it's really simple, yet there's not a lot of people that do that very well.
No, there certainly is not. The average working class American will not generate enough income to retire unless they invest the money into something that will give them some compounding interest.
Okay. Got it.
I can't take and stuff that money underneath my mattress and expect it to double.
Right.
It's just not going to. I'm going to have as much there as what I had when I started putting it in there.
Right. And that probably has to do with something like the cost of living, the increase of the interest rate, the needs that we have that are far more expensive tomorrow than they are today. So it just doesn't work to stuff any of the money that I put under my mattress today for save it away for the future. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. So you have to figure out how to make that money grow. And obviously that's the big topic of discussion. And so there are a lot of vehicles in order to make that money grow. None of it is real guaranteed. There are no guarantees, right?
Right. So you're saying pretty much, and this is what I've come to understand, that there's some gamble to everything.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
There is.
Not encouraging gambling, just saying there's some gamble to everything.
Right. But, most employers offer a type of retirement, whether it be a pension, whether it be, and those are going away. And it's more of a self-directed retirement fund, 401k, a 403b. Really, the only difference between those two is one is offered at a for-profit, which is the 401k, and the 403b is offered at a non-profit organization.
Got it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You then have your IRAs. So and those have limits as to how much money you can make before you can contribute, depending on what type it is.
Right. And how much money you can put in as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And then you have mutual funds. That's more of an investment vehicle, which is where you got a lot of stocks put together and you're buying a small portion of that with a bunch of other people.
Got it.
Okay. And then you have stocks where you're investing stock. You're buying a share in the ownership of a company. Example, Apple, Google.
Right.
General Motors, Ford.
Right.
Those are the most typical.
Right.
Then you have a cash value life insurance policy. And that is a very specific product for a very small set of people.
Okay.
And I can touch on that later.
Yeah.
And then obviously, again, there's just that emergency fund.
Right. Okay, so what I hear you saying is when we're thinking about money and we're thinking about building wealth, there's different ways to do it, and there's different risk factors by how we do it.
Correct.
So 401k, 403b, less risky than investing in the stock market.
Correct.
Okay, got it. So we're weighing our options there on how we're going to do this, how we're going to build wealth, what it's going to look like. And of course, I would assume that there's all kinds of other options. Venture capitalism, investing in a new business, stuff like that, or even I would assume having multiple forms of income as a form of investment to build our wealth, right?
Right.
So
real estate.
Yeah, real estate, for example. Like some people do real estate on the side as they work another job or whatever. Okay, got it. So we have a lot of options there. Now I want to come back to something that that caught my attention when we first started here. And it's the fact that you were talking about me having a form of wealth that I use in the kingdom, and it can have outputs in other people's lives. So it made me think that really when we think of wealth, we tend to think of dollar signs. We tend to think of cash in hand or people that have a whole lot of money. But from what it sounds from your standpoint, there may be people out there that have a wealth of other kinds of things that either, maybe produce money or maybe don't, but they do have wealth. So it sounds to me like that word may move around a little bit.
Yeah, I think it does. There's a wealth of a lot of things. Wealth is just it's really an adjective to describe what is, an abundance of something.
Okay, got it. All right.
And I think wealth is not synonymous. Being wealthy as far monetarily is not synonymous with being happy either.
That's good. Say more about that, because I know we've talked about we've talked about the idea that sometimes we think that wealth is synonymous with happiness, but I'm kind of wondering, is there times in your life that you've experienced where there's a break between those two things?
Absolutely. When I first started out life, I had a lot of friends who made a lot more money than I did.
Okay.
And they were able to go on these vacations, and they looked like they were having so much fun.
Right.
And I always stressed about some of this stuff. And so when I finally got to that point where I was starting to actually make as much, and in a lot of cases more than what some of those other people that I was friends with were making, I suddenly felt this need to go out and buy a lot of stuff. And so one of the examples that I went out and did a couple of years ago, and I don't ever recommend this to any of you guys out there, but I bought a Harley Davidson without telling my wife.
That's awesome. But so wrong. I didn't know you never told your wife. That's great.
know. And
when did she find out exactly?
When she walked onto the showroom floor and my son goes, "Mom, that's the color of Dad's bike, but that's not his. His is out back because they brought it from another dealer."
Okay. Awkward moment.
Oh my gosh, it was not good. It was not good. And I bought this bike, and the story goes is that I had started saving for this motorcycle because I love Harley Davidsons. I'm wearing a Harley shirt right now.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Yeah. But I was saving and saving and saving to buy one. And it took longer than what I anticipated. And I was saving at a slower rate than what I really wanted to.
Right.
And so what had happened was I got this impulsive bug.
Right.
It's March, the motorcycle show, the car show, had just come, everything had been there. And I stopped into the Harley dealership and I looked at this beautiful blue touring motorcycle, and I was so excited to see it. And then I looked at the price tag and I went, that one's not going to work. And he said, well, I've got one for less money. And I said, how much less money? And so we negotiated, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I went, oh no, I just bought a motorcycle.
Yeah, right.
And so I had to tell my wife that this is what I was doing, and she was not happy with me.
Yeah.
But I thought, when I wanted to save for that, I thought that it was going to bring me happiness.
Got it. Yeah.
And I had the bike for a year and a half.
Okay.
And I sold it just this last summer. By God's grace, he said, it can go, and it can go for what you're asking for it. And I really realized that that motorcycle didn't make me any happier than what I was before. And I started to realize that the stuff that is in my life doesn't make me any happier. And so I don't ever want to confuse having a lot of money with being happy, because they are two totally different things.
That's a fantastic story, Nick. I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think it shows and demonstrates transparency. But I got to tell you, we've all felt that way. We feel somehow the world convinces us that wealth and happiness are synonymous. Yeah. Until we have to learn the hard lesson on our own. And they're not, like you said. And once we understand that, then we begin to understand that really wealth comes from something else. Yeah. I've often read through Ecclesiastes, which is just some of the poetry of Solomon. And if we reach our mind back to Solomon, I think we discover that this was a guy who was, yes, exceedingly wealthy from a standpoint of riches and money and gold and possessions and minerals and all that kind of stuff, right? And we know that he was the richest man to ever live and that would ever live. Donald J. Trump is not the richest man who ever lived. I mean, not even close. And Solomon was this guy who was exceedingly wealthy, but we forget about where that wealth came from. Really, the wealth was generated by his exceeding wisdom, right? And it's his wisdom that was actually wealthy, right? That led to the riches, which were another form of wealth. And I think what's so astounding when I read books like Ecclesiastes or the Song of Solomon, or even some of the happenstance of his life as he was living, was he had a form of wealth inside of him that produced financial wealth, and that wisdom was profound, and it really led to other things. And that isn't a guarantee that wisdom always leads to wealth, right? Financial wealth. But there was something about something else that generated that. It has always been astounding to me. There's a Proverbs, as we close here, Nick, that I just think is worth reading. It says this in Proverbs 13, verse 22, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous." I think that's really interesting. Because, we started talking about, I think it was Andrew Carnegie here at the beginning, who said he wants to leave with nothing left. And while I understand that when it comes to finances, but yet at the same time, we don't want to leave with nothing left. Right? We want to leave something for somebody else besides ourselves. And I think that would be the point that I would have loved to have heard Andrew Carnegie say, which we read right here in the Proverbs, is we're not really leaving stuff for ourselves. It's for other people. And if we choose to leave it for ourselves, it says here the sinner's wealth is laid up for
the righteous.
You and me.
Yeah.
That's right. And all the guys listening today. So with that, I just want to challenge you guys to say, maybe consider really what you're doing for the kingdom, and consider how you're building your wealth and what God wants to use in you to build, I would say, true happiness and true wealth while you're here on earth. Well, gentlemen, that's the show. Thanks for listening. Men, I want to encourage you to find a couple of other men to join in with you. Listening on your own is great, but finding a couple of other men to join in with you will make you even wealthier. I also want to strongly recommend our newest book entitled Convictions. It's designed to help you to move from being convicted toward living with conviction in your life, with 4 factors that I believe will alter how you live the Christian life. It also comes with 4 small group videos for discussion in any men's group that you lead. I'd love to have you pick up this book today. Just head to the website to purchase the book. So guys, get off the bench, get into the game. If you have any questions or comments, email me at info@beresolute.org. And until next time, I love you guys, and be, live, and act resolute.